fourth session of the day, or third proper session. I'll invite Kaila and Guiste and Gibran Espirit to come and join me. So what I'm going to do is I'll just speak for a couple of minutes just to give a little bit of the kind of preamble for what this work stream is all about. We've imagined the different parts of the project as different streams, different tributaries to some bigger whole, to the river that is flowing as this project, so to speak. So this stream is more in the present. So it's more thinking about, much like the Creative Repair, the films that you've just watched, this one is more thinking about present experiences to recent hurricanes, recent stories. Is anyone looking familiar in the picture there? So this is from a workshop that we held as part of the Dominica Story Project, which we're going to get into what that's all about. And this was just learning some techniques and skills for making films. They actually traded places, right? As in Kaila, you were doing some of the interview work, although you did camera work as well, and Gibran mostly did camera work. So Gibran was twinned up with Mia, and you were twinned up with Rennie, is that right? One of the other interns. So let's get into a little bit of context so you understand what's going on here, and then we're going to watch some of the films that they made. And I'm not sure if they're coming in on the live, but one of my students at Goldsmiths who's taken the Caribbean ethnography course, shout out Audrey Alwood, who's going to be picking up that course and teaching it next year, later on in the academic year. But she actually studied on that course and then was able to apply some of what she'd learned about the history of the region and so on to do some of the editing work for the films that these guys created. So it's making those connections between parts of the world which are already connected in many ways. Deptford was big in terms of sugar. The Royal West India Quay is very close to here. Many Caribbean populations settled here. So Goldsmiths from the Caribbean have this, and this part of London, I should say, and the Caribbean have this long-standing connection. All right, so let's get into a little bit of what the Dominica Story Project is about, the kind of vision of the project. So it begins long before Surviving Storms, and it begins with Dr. Kaila Espirit, who's based at the University of the West Indies, and she's the founding director of Create Caribbean. And her sister, Yuan, still is at the back, and is project manager, leading the way with most of the work that's going on at Create Caribbean. And both Gibran and Kaila are both interns, or graduated interns. And what's your official title with Create Caribbean now?
The office assistant.
The office assistant. So all of the day-to-day affairs of making things happen at Create Caribbean, Kaila has inherited that very important role. But the idea is that Create Caribbean was set up. Give me the date. We're going back. 2014.
Yeah.
So in a couple of years, it'll be the 10-year anniversary. I can't believe it's that time already. I remember first meeting Kaila when she just returned from doing a PhD in the States, and she'd returned to Dominica. She was doing work in the digital humanities. She'd done a PhD on reading in the Caribbean and literary audiences in the Caribbean and how people are making sense of Caribbean literature. Born and raised in Dominica, had involvement in the Nature Hour Literary Festival as well as many other things, and she wanted to set up a digital humanities hub, a program for young people to be able to inquire about their history, to be able to learn about the literary production of the island, to engage in work in relation to poetry and various different kinds of things. She eventually set up Create Caribbean, building a centre from the ground up and giving it a home at the Dominica State College eventually, where she would go on to work. We had those initial conversations, and then months and months later, after she'd done other very much related projects, she'd been doing work with GIS and mapping. She'd been doing the Carrie Sealand project, which was looking at the environmental, people's relationships to their environment and various different social issues in Dominica. And then we talked about the possibility of applying for this to give some more resource to some of the work that they were doing. Fast forward now to 2021, and the Dominica Story Project began. And the reason it's got this name is because we were very much inspired by the Neighborhood Story Project. Now this is a local community-based, what's the best way of saying it? Like a center, like an NGO that basically works with folks in New Orleans to tell stories and write books about their own project, about their own lives and about their own community. So it started as a writing group for students at a secondary school in New Orleans, and it predates Hurricane Katrina, but it actually became more significant, more meaningful to be able to tell your own stories when the eyes of the world were on New Orleans and all kind of stories were coming out about New Orleans, which were often quite racialized, often repeddling the same kinds of stories post-disaster, and people weren't able to tell their own stories to a visible audience, and so they started producing books and that kind of thing. So long after the CNN and various different news agencies have come and gone from Dominica, talking about references to it being like a war zone or whatever kinds of documentation is offered in the first instance to measure the scale of the disaster, we wanted to ask, well, what happens if young people are doing interviews themselves and asking their own questions? So we did some workshops. You see Gabrielle there, drawing on her influencer social media skills, and the young people from the program who already had some experience of interviews prior to us coming there, jumped in on the programs, got involved in the technology, did some of the kind of practice-based stuff, and also did a workshop with Ricardo, who they recently met, who's based at the Center for Visual Anthropology here. I had a conversation with Ricardo. You know, I never told you guys this. I had a conversation with Ricardo during the time when we were in Dominica, and I said, look, Ricardo, we have some money set aside for you to come to Dominica and to deliver this workshop. And he said, oh, don't worry about that. He's like, I don't need a ticket to Dominica, just use the money which you have and see if you can get folks from Dominica to come to London. And since I've been speaking to you guys about this place called Goldsmiths, and again, eventually it will become like a fictional place because you kept hearing that and you've never seen it for yourself, and you had to come here and see for yourself. And so they met Ricardo last week, which is really, really nice. And he walked us through, and I learned so much in the process as well, about different ways that you can make films using handheld phone devices, different ways of telling a story visually as well. And then there were some nice sessions where these guys, among other members of their cohort, came together and drew up their own interview schedules. If you're going to a community, and the community was a place that I'd previously done research, 15 minutes from my auntie's house with lots of friends who I've known for many years. If you're going to community with fellow survivors of hurricanes and you want to ask questions, what did they learn from the storm? What was their experience like? What did they learn from earlier storms that they might have drawn upon for recovering from Maria? What does recovery or healing even mean? Is it even possible to talk about these things? These were the kinds of interesting questions and interesting discussions that emerged. And yeah, some of the stories were quite kind of beautiful and really powerful. So I've spoken enough. What I think we can do is we can show a few of the films just for everyone to see, just a shorter version. What it would be nice to do, if you guys are happy to, is Kaila or Gibran, you can do it whichever order you want. Kaila, obviously we're going to show Oggy and Al's film, and Gibran, we're going to show Rhoda and Priscilla's films. Do either of you want to just introduce the films just briefly beforehand? I know you've gone there, I know you've had those conversations with them. Did you want to introduce it, or we can go ahead and just share however you guys want to do it?
I think you should just show it.
Just show it, let it speak for itself, and then we can have a discussion afterwards.
Yes.
Yeah? Alright, sounds good. Alright, so first of all, we're going to speak to Oggy. So Kaila was the interviewee, and her classmate Rennick was doing the film work.
Surviving storms.
Surviving storm.
Surviving storms.
About from Maria, like what new things you made notes of in your head after going through?
Well, I saw David. I said to myself, I could not tell how I could figure and David. David was Maria's sister. Yes, sister. Yeah. He was Maria's brother. Maria's grandmother. Maria came stronger than David. So now I will advise anybody, if you have to do anything, don't build a big house. Build a very strong, small house. You understand?
Yes, anything
Yes, I next thing you must know is too much furniture in your house. Because one is where I come, everything is mashed up. It's like me, I'm not going to my bed mashed up, my wardrobe, my thing. I go to the street at one time, I bought some Martin Luther picture and some, African looking picture, all these things, everything. My passport gone, my everything gone, all my savings gone, everything gone. And the land people is going.
So there's much longer versions which feature on the map. So again, if you navigate around the map, you find an area called Loubiere, which is in the southwest, and you can get the much longer version. Kaila, did you want to speak to anything of what he just mentioned now? I know for some people, Oggy speaks quite fast as well, so not everyone might have caught everything that he was saying. Was there anything that you wanted to that you took from that one?
Well, with the interview with Oggy, basically his point of view was that he went through Hurricane David and he lost his home. I think he told me he was living in Casa Comfort or Girodale. He was living higher up on the hill. And he said that he had his house, he had very expensive furniture from Martinique made out of high quality wood, and he had all kinds of African artifacts and crafts and so on in his house, and it was completely destroyed. Everything was from the wind and the water of the rain when the roof is gone, everything was just damaged. And he had to abandon that house, and he left Dominica, came back and built back in Point Michel, I believe, and then Point Michel, Loubiere area. He said, I don't remember what exactly he said. And then Hurricane Maria passed and he lost everything again. So he was telling me that, you know, he lost that connection to material things because of how often he loses things, and so now he spends his days outside with nature that doesn't change, and he has an appreciation for the small things that he has, the little that he has, because he doesn't have the capacity to keep things that he might lose. So when you see, I don't know how much of Al's interview you will see, but I just found the contrast between the two of them very interesting, because Oggy kept saying, like, you know, there's no going back, there's no building back. I can't get everything again. There's no point in collecting art. There's no point in, you know, good furniture because you're gonna lose it. So he said, you know, he likes to spend his days under the tree, enjoying the breeze, hear the river, and just enjoy the rest of his retirement. Yes, so that's a summary of Oggy's.
It's so interesting because I remember when I'd come there, so I was running back and forth. There was 2 sets of interviews going on at any given time, and I'd be running back and forth just checking in, because I was doing the matchmaking, saying so-and-so meet so-and-so, here we go, off you go, talk, you know what you're doing, I'd leave it to you guys, and then I'd run off to the next place. But I remember with him, he talked about, you asked him about healing, didn't you?
Yes.
And you asked him if he thought he could heal.
Yeah, he told me.
No.
Yeah, he said, that's what I was saying, he said that he can't go back and get those things anymore because he lost the attachment to keeping things. He lost the concept of keeping things because he lost them so much and so often, and they were so meaningful to him. He cannot bear losing things again.
I think you set us up really nicely to go into Al's film. So whilst I asked you guys for an introduction and you politely declined, you've then given me one, so I'm going to jump straight into that.
Surviving storms.
Surviving storm.
Surviving storms.
What did you learn from like Mario?
Well, I didn't know about myself. I didn't know I was that strong mentally. Yeah, so like, I can say it now. I do not, I think I'm more resilient than I think. Like, for example, I never thought that I would see something like that and then going through it, I was like calm, I didn't overreact. And then next day went into survival mode and trying to get things done and do not have to do and stuff. Yeah. And then we just continued the day after and then trying to get everything back in order and relocating and stuff and just moving forward. Yeah. Just like letting go and moving forward as quick as possible to get back some normalcy. Because you not have to start from zero after marriage. I mean, yeah, to get back to where I still progressing, so just constant progress. Yeah.
And like, how would you prepare for like the upcoming hurricane season?
Well, I definitely will prepare, but that's how I can say it now. I won't take chances this time. Although, if, like, let's say, I know complacency does come back, and after a number of years, you don't see no hurricane or something, people like. But I believe because of marriage, I think I will take it, listen to the radio, prepare, have stuff, stock up and stuff, and then if I have to move, I will definitely move. Yeah.
We talk a lot about the experiences and like, I think that's going to help people a lot that if I talk about it as like shared experiences.
Yeah.
And I feel like we move into a better place in the future.
Yeah, man, we will never better place. Trust me.
I think that well, thank you for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
Sharing your experiences with us.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, it was a good and bad experience because like growing up, we always hear your friends talking about Hurricane David, but we never like be checking like Hurricane David. We never take it. So like it was. Yeah, you always hear your friends talking about David and stuff, and they recover, but we never experienced David until Mario came. So now we know what it is. So we'll be more lit.
Talking to one guy high up and he said like Maria was David's sister.
Yeah, you see? Yeah. So you already know about it and then experience it is two different things. Because we was complacent, trust me, we was complacent because we never experienced it. But now we experience it, trust me, fear nothing coming again. You know we have to move. We have to take it. So I believe it helps in a way to take out the complacency. Yeah. So all I knew is right.
So we're going to pass around the house?
We're going to pass through it, over it. Besides it, we're going to make big shit in that vision before. You see, so you see what?
Yeah.
You see what's behind the wall.
Yeah.
And then you see what's behind the wall.
It didn't look like it's so hard for you to visualize how it used to be.
Completely changed. So you don't come and go and see.
Yeah, man, it's cool.
See your hand? See? Yes, you know, watch it. Comment that is valuable now. So you see your hand? See it over there? See what?
Kaila, did you want to speak to anything that stuck out from that one? So we'll continue going through. All right. So nice work to Kaila and to Rennick obviously as well. Big up to Al for all his hard work. I pitched in with one or two little questions because I couldn't help myself. But yeah. And thank you as well to Sam Sweetin, again the student I mentioned who did the editing. So big up to everyone who's involved in that one. So now we'll jump over to Rhoda first and hear a little bit about
Surviving storms.
Surviving storm.
Surviving storms.
Was there anything that you learned from the
For sure, it taught me a lot, but it taught me a very important lesson in that in everything, in every adversity, we cannot forget that there's a creator, that we have to call on him so that he can help us to get through these difficult times, and do not place emphasis on material things. Life is so much more precious. Where you saw we lost, because I think we lost about 11 or more lives in Loubiere. you know, and for one guy in particular, we lost a lot of young people, but we have that young guy, Cleveland Black, and there was nobody that he did not help in the community. So just losing him during Maria because he was trying to help another young person that the river was carrying away, and he himself got washed away in that. So he is one that we really miss because you could have counted on him to help you in anything, and he would not say no. So it was difficult, but lessons learned, and good lessons at that.
What are future hopes for the village?
We have a number of things I would like to see addressed in the community. For example, where I'm living now, the community has come together and we're rehabilitating our road. That was one of the roads that the river actually took after Maria. So every Saturday we come together, we cook for the community, and the men in the community, they come together and we do a piece of road. It's been off for a couple of weeks because of lack of material, but that is one of our aims. So to see that part of the community develop. We have our playing field that has been sitting for a few years now in rains, and Maria just made it worse. The village council is trying their best to see how they go about getting it on par, but it will take a lot. So our young people we love our playing field because that's where we used to have all our activities. So for me, our playing field is the main area in the community that I would like to see get back to where it used to be, or even better. And debrief that the river and the road made one. So we used to put planks and walk over, and then all the mess between the two rivers, because remember the two rivers kind of collided, and all that muck and big logs. You saw logs? Oh, and to be going through that. For me, it took me a while to actually accept it, and one of my getaway, as I said to you, was going to Guadeloupe, because I saw what Erica did, and I saw how it affected me emotionally, and I didn't want Mario to have that same effect on me. So probably every 2 months or so, we would just escape and go visit my mom in Guadeloupe, stay for a while, and then come back. And it felt good because even after Maria, the mosquitoes, oh, people could not cope, and there was no mosquito coils or anything like that. For me, I was able to go to Guadeloupe, get a few mosquito bats, you know, get the nets to put on the door, the magnetic nets, you know, and, you know, just live a little better than some, but you have to do something for your comfort, you know. But it's just that the lives we lost, because right there we lost a lady. The landslide came and she got trapped, and her family could not get her out. So I think after that she suffered a heart attack. Even not too long ago, I was talking to her grandson, and he told me, you know that we had to bury her right there. So she was buried. She's buried here in the yard. Yeah, because at the time the officers came and thought she began to decompose, so they just have to just dig a hole and bury her there. And then we lost a 6-month-old baby just down the road. Yeah, the river, by the time the river came and they were on that side, it just became too much. So really became too much. Yes, because the mother had, I think, a 2-year-old and the baby, and like the river just came into the house. Sometimes she grabbed. The baby slid out of her hand, and sometimes she tried to. Losing John, losing Myrtle and Moya, and it's like coming to the reality of it. That was the hardest part, because you just expect it. Yeah, because we spoke about him, yes, and you know that he was one of the persons. You just call on him, and to see that he lost his life trying to help.
Shall I play the last one and then we'll talk to them all together? And then finally, Priscilla, who lives
Surviving
elsewhere in the village.
storms.
Surviving storm.
Surviving storms.
How did you and the people of your community heal or recover from the experiences of marriage?
Well, people recover there. As far as I can see, people recovered. And when I think about black people and resilience, and not just black people now, I think is minority, people that are not very wealthy. Well, there was an old saying that necessity is the father of invention. And when people don't have all what they would like to have, you know, they find ways to get things done. And so the people, they went through a lot, especially those who lost their property, their life. People lost their lives, people lost their loved ones, and people lost their property. But I know it affected some of the older ones differently. The younger generation, well, you know, once you had a simple life and you had contentment in your life, you know, I guess we all realize that we have to get up and do what we have to do. Black people, we had our history of slavery. I guess that built resilience in the black nation because, you know, our ancestors went through so much and yet still they stood up and we are here, we are their descendants and we are up to today. So that is resilience already. So I guess it's in our blood. And so people have bounced back. I mean, we're accustomed to a hard life. You know, we're accustomed. But one advantage we have is that God has blessed the land. God bless the land all over the place, but especially Dominica. Because anything, they said, once a seed is spat out, it grows in Dominica. So even if Maria took, you know, most of what we had, but, you know, see, there's a coconut tree in the bush up there. There is a mango tree survived by the river over there. A breadfruit tree survived down there by the church. So, you know, these little things, when people go around, they make themselves, and as long as we have contentment, we have hope. And hope, we have life, we have hope. That's how I see it. But what I think was lacking in a way to the topic of resilience, I think that when people go through this kind of traumatic experiences, psychological health, we didn't have that. We didn't have that. A lot of people didn't have, I mean, everybody talked to each other, everybody went through expressing themselves, but when you think of the elderly person, you know, sitting in a strange place because they lose their home and they contemplating all these things, and sometimes they don't have the people to talk to, especially they haven't got a psychology, they haven't got somebody that come and sit down like you sitting down with me now and they come and ask me questions and we talking. Other people, they didn't have that. So I think that is a need, that's a need that we should put things in place, that whenever there's a traumatic experience, that psychological health will be available to people. I think that was lacking. That's one of the most important things that was lacking. Because on another note, my father, I remember at a certain time after Maria, a couple of months, he keeps saying to me, Priscilla, we have got somebody overseas. We can just leave and go. You know, it's like he got fed up with, you know, the way things were, and you know, so all these psychological things, you know, because if he really needed to go, just like right now where we have St. Vincent and the volcano, right now they have people that want to go. The other Caribbean countries say you can come. So maybe we could have had something like that too. I mean, there are people, you have your people to live and you go. After Hurricane David, a lot of people left. You know, Hurricane Erica, when it damaged those villages, who could have left? They left. I remember after Erica, I met a young man from that village I was washed away. And he had lost all his family members. He said, I see my brother die, I see my family, I see my mother die. Right in front of me, because remember, the landslide came down and they were all trapped. They were all trapped in the mud. And well, thankfully people came and they pulled him out in time. But his parents were right around him, his family, and they died. So, this thing should be, well, I can't say it should be available because I mean the other governments don't see it as their responsibility, but just like that volcano is erupting right now, and like Dominica, we said yes, we can have some, and even COVID going on, I find that's a good thing that they offer. So if we had that, at least when my father said, isn't that somewhere we can go? At least we would have taken the opportunity and go for a few months, and maybe that could have helped him heal his heart. But then he had to just stay in it and then.
All right, so let's open up into a brief discussion where we can talk through just a few of the things that came out. What struck you about your memories of that interview, of those two discussions, Gibran? Was there anything that kind of jumped out to you as being memorable?
The both interviews, especially the first one, every time I watch it, I wouldn't let's say literal tears, but it would have me in a certain mood where I'm feeling emotional because of so many losses, and a lot of losses were our friends. And I remember she mentioned the guy Cleve, who was so helpful to everyone, and it's like close friends, you lose close friends, and what it feels like. Especially when you said that she lost they lost a little baby as well. Like what did the baby experience? Nothing yet, and then life took away from that. And another thing is, with this interview that I took from it is appreciate every moment, even with people you are with, because you never know what happens, what you learn things from people. So another thing is that with this, you see that she understands what is a hurricane and what are the possibilities that can happen. So she'll always try telling everyone else to stay safe or try follow protocols so that things like that can happen again, or get away from lying areas where the river can overbank it. So yeah.
It's powerful. As you were saying that, the introductions which I made between the students and folks in Loubiere. So I lived between 2012 and 2014. I probably lived in Loubiere for around 14 months, something like that, so just over a year. And each of the people who were spoken about, I knew personally, and the same Cleve, me and him were neighbours, and he checked me almost every day. I never really told you you guys that, because the same emotion that you're feeling, I think it felt a little bit raw and sensitive each time the name comes up. So as you're talking about it, you're feeling that, even as someone who didn't know them personally, I can relate to that. It's like it brings it back almost, and it's almost a shock to you each time. It's almost like you don't see it coming, even though of course it's coming because you've heard the interview before. But there was something that struck me about the way that Priscilla was talking about the value of those conversations, particularly for the elders. And it seemed like that thing of the elders having that challenge, even though they've gone through those storms before, and maybe because they've gone through those storms before, that challenge of being able to recover, or not feeling like they have the strength to, or sometimes being so taken by the father who wanted to leave to have somewhere to go, much like Rhoda did when she went to Guadeloupe. What do you think the value is of? Did you feel a sense of the value of those discussions in the interviews themselves? Did it feel like it was releasing certain things, or even in your own observations from going back to the storm time, did you feel like coming together and talking, or was it something people just had to deal with on their own?
A lot of many people, like when you see many people had because many people homes destroyed and you maybe had to live in a shelter, so that maybe a lot of people share their stories, but sharing your story and every time it can help you. So I believe that what you're saying about the psychological help, you could get that would be very, very important. Even now it would still be important, because things, this when you get psychological issues, it carries on for a very long time. So even if we have psychological centers, would still help them at this point, even though they are grown, or for the younger people who saw it, because just imagine a young child so experience it and understand what went on. There's a psychological effect of that, and psychological effect leaves something in someone. So it would be very good to keep it, and especially for the old people. I remember in the interview she said that since Maria, a lot of the older people they started to die and due to heart attacks and just some shock and things like that. So I think like these kind of things have really left an effect on the people.
That is very true. Another thing is a lot of the people, when you meet someone that wants to talk about Maria, they're very, very willing to tell you what happened in very excruciating detail because it's very much printed very clearly in the mind.
Very clear.
Yes,
I remember
very
at that time I was in let's say fourth form in high school, and some individuals came and interviewed us for a survey that they had, and when I gave my story, she was she understand it very clearly because I gave it in real details where you could actually see what happening, and she was she was feeling thank you for giving my interview because she said maybe I would have not want to give my interview. I was like, what? Not give it? Because I want to give my story because to give what happened and how you survived it. When you're a hero, of course you want to see how you survived and what you did.
I like what you said that you're a hero because you survived.
Yeah. And in a way that speaks to what Al was saying as well, right? He's like, I didn't realize the mental strength that I had until I was tested in this way. Not to say to look differently upon those who don't have that mental strength because everyone faces their own circumstances and so on. But it's really amazing what maybe the eye of Maria, if we want to put it that way, might reveal to you,
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the kind of comparison I had as well between Augie and Al. I interviewed both of them the same day. So we met Augie we were just walking around the road looking for where Al would be. And then we met Augie on the bench and we're like, oh, do you want to? He's like, what are we doing? So we explain everything and he's like, okay, sure, I'll tell you, I'll talk, let's go. So we had that on the fly, and then from that conversation when Augie told me, he doesn't want anything, he doesn't want to keep anything, he ready to just move on and let things happen. We went to speak with Al, who also lost everything. The river actually, I think that was the place to the most damage it would be on the shore, but the river just passed
the river
through.
And the sea.
Like he said, right over, through, besides, all over the house, just right through. And there were many people in that house with them. He lost some people that he saw earlier in the day within the span of a few hours of the hurricane.
And even his own family members too.
Yes, his own family members, and it was very moving to hear him talk about it, because I'd only heard stories of what had happened in Loubiere, and then to hear him describe it for me, and we were right there at the scene, so I could see exactly and envision what he was talking about. And that little stream that you saw in the video, that was the monstrous river that created the beach at Loubiere. There was actually no beach there. There's a sea and underground. Now there's a beach, and it's just crazy to think about that little stream doing that much damage and changing lives in that area so drastically. They have two rivers in that area. That one is a creek. Nobody ever thought about it doing that, and so it was a very big shock for him. And he was very positive about it. He was saying that he was feeling grateful to have survived, and he was feeling that because he is alive and because he can do things, he devoted his time and his mental capacity at the moment. How he said, let go and move on, so he could help other people, because he's not the only person in the area who got damaged, and he's a very active community member. So he was busy doing those things. And that was from the questions we were asking from our little book, And then we turned off the camera, we turned off the mic, but then we started exchanging stories. So we turned the camera back on, we turned the mic back on, and we started having a conversation. That's when Adam came in, and then I was coming from behind the camera, started to talk and share my story, and he shared his story, and the space became relaxed, and we all exchanged our stories. It was very comfortable. It was, like I said, it was very moving. I was tearing up because, it just happened, right? But I think that is extremely important as well, right? Because, it happened to you, I know it happened to you too, but unwrapping it and like combing through it makes it a part of something longer rather than this bunched up thing that you like stick in a drawer, and then when you take it out, it pops out at you. You know, instead it's all nice and folded, so when you revisit it, like now I'm not crying. If I talk about it last year, I'd probably be crying. You know, so yeah, I think that's very important. I think I did see opportunities for people to go to psychiatrists and so on to speak after the hurricane. Like when we went back to school, there were posters and stuff and flyers sharing, but in Dominica, we
because
don't really.
The picture they paint behind going there is
People don't trust. They don't like to tell their business, so to say. Like they don't like to share personal details so freely. Like when you're talking to somebody that it's comfortable, like oh that person, like you know they're gonna go away, whatever. When you're telling it to somebody who's looking into your mind, so to speak, it feels a little intrusive to them, so they don't feel like sharing in that way. And also people have their reservations about psychiatrists, like I said, telling their business. And in the Caribbean, they don't like to share too many details, so people held those things to themselves. Maybe if we could find a way, very comfortable, like groups, you know, like if they had group discussions of it. It wasn't so structured. Maybe then they would have been able to share their stories and get some healing in a grander scale, you know?
I know that at the time too, when you feel like sharing your story, it's not really anything the people going to do for you. So at that time, that people are looking for something for you to do for them. So if you tell me my story, like, what are you going to do for me? I tell you, on that night,
I will switch my house.
You tell me, oh, share my story, and then you help me with my house, then sure, I'll share my story many times. But yeah, but the thing is that because people don't appreciate, like, let's say, like holding on to something that somebody tells you, like, not because we could share our story to a lot of people, but we share it to you. So, and we're telling you in detail thing which is confidential. So, you know what?
First, like the vulnerability.
Yeah, or
respecting the vulnerability of the conversation.
That's right. So, for a lot of the things that went on, I would just really say that it brought a lot of together time, right? And that was very good because a lot of people there is very separated. Like before that, people be in their home, everybody that's in their home, you don't know, outside going and chill or something. Only time you would see people go outside is just to drink or whatever. But that brought a lot of time with no devices and just real one-on-one time and
water,
real time. And you have to go to carry water with your friend or, you know, you have to do things together. So it brought back that thing of togetherness.
Washing in the river together and that kind of stuff.
So you're helping out one another and somebody's helping you and put that great vibes.
Yes, but there's just so many things to go through because, I mean, your immediate thing is I want food to eat and then I have to go to sleep, so something needs to be over my head. And then next day you probably need to bathe, so you need clothes. And then so the needs come one after the other, and eventually the need for that psychological health comes up. And, you know, it's here now because right now things are okay, okay enough. So now, and then the pandemic hit, you know, in the middle of still recuperating. So I think around the time the pandemic hit, we were just entering that arc of, okay, now let's try to heal the mind. Now that we have a roof over our head, we have food, we can go back to work, we have light, we have Wi-Fi. How are we, right?
So is there something as well, and I wanna have a minute to open it up, but I know that we're running out of time. But is there something to the fact that we were having these discussions 4 years on? So 4 years on, there was enough time in terms of those immediate things. Like you said, obviously the pandemic was hitting, but it seemed like there was an openness to talk about some of these painful things and that those discussions could open up. And especially, as you guys said, in the format of you've been moving through a regular interview, and then we've reached the point when like the mic is just about to be clicked off and everybody's about to go about their business, and then the conversation perks up. You mind if we keep recording? Yeah, sure, go ahead. And then that's when we really get into the heart of it.
And then you get the real thing,
because then the question book is closed and now it's like just heart to heart.
All right, well, let's throw it open for a little 5 minutes if there's anybody who wants to reflect on or just offer comments, any questions. Yeah, go ahead. And can we introduce ourselves just for anyone who doesn't know us yet as we're going?
Yeah, hi, I'm Kieran. I'm from the Department of Sociology, and I don't know anything about this part of the world, which is why I came along. I was just interested.
But what part of the world are you working in?
My work is mainly in Sri Lanka, And I was just, when you were just talking about the need for some kind of space to talk, but not feeling like you wanted to go to in basically the town that I work a lot in, it has a big lagoon, and so the tsunami, basically you had the sea and the lagoon come and basically cover the whole of the town. So similar to what you're describing, like pretty much everyone I know who is from that town has a story, lost somebody, you know, had an experience of displacement. And in the aftermath, as you were describing, you know, first of all, people are taking care of their basic needs, but there is all this trauma and, you know, the stories that you want to share. But my question was going to be in Sri Lanka, what ended up happening was a lot of that got filtered through like ritual temples. So like, you know, because temples were a site where people would gather anyway. And so even though you'd kind of perform the normal rituals that you always perform, some of those stories and some of the feelings ended up channeled indirectly through that. So I was wondering, you know, what were the role of churches or other sites, where did people use those as a kind of way of doing some of that talking and healing, or not so much?
I think a lot of the talking and healing happened in the river, where people would meet each other, you know, in the morning to wash clothes, in the afternoon to bathe and wash things. That's when a lot of people met. And also your direct neighbors, when helping to remove stuff in the yard or to help people out directly, take them out of rubble and stuff like that. I don't, in the immediate aftermath, I don't think I saw a lot of like church groups or any of those things happening, because everybody was very much concerned with them, their self and their area, and a lot of churches were destroyed.
All the churches were used for shelters.
That too. Some churches were used for shelters as well. So the church community wasn't very like, they didn't have the opportunity to, you know, really come together like that. So it was mainly just your neighborhood, but that's what would have gotten closer.
It's interesting, the river is like, people often talk about the Caribbean in relation to the sea, but less in relation to the river. But the river is a place where, back in the day, people would do baptisms there, you'd be rebirthed into a new life in the river. Is people, the elders have these songs about leaving your cares by the riverside, these kinds of songs. So it's interesting that people were returning to the river as this meeting place where there was a certain kind of healing that was going on alongside the necessity of the everyday work of washing clothes and all this stuff.
Yeah, so that's why I met a lot of people in my community that I didn't really talk to when we went to the river. Sometimes you want to go to the river just to come out in the house, to stop seeing, you know, everything destroyed. You go to the river because the river looks like a river no matter what happens to it. You know, it has the trees, it has the rocks always. So you go to the river to get some normalcy, some peace. It sounds nice. There's people there, you know. So that was the place of people communing and speaking and healing and so on. That's your question.
My part wasn't really that.
You want to give a very brief response about one more question in? Go ahead, Gibran. I'm not trying to cut you.
So
one more after.
For the river part, I only went to river part for recreation because.
So someone else was washing your clothes for you, man?
Yeah, we had a machine.
Okay, so it's up working. Okay, that's good.
So we had got lighting, so the generator.
I was going to ask, when you talked about healing and psychological trauma, I was just looking at this project and thinking, you know, how do you share back your project to the community, and do you think there's a role and a place that these films can help, maybe even give to whoever might want to group together, and, you know, as a mutual support where people can watch this and maybe start to communicate and go into those deep spaces together? You know, maybe just not always a professional psychologist coming in, as well as, you know, having like community healing. And do you see your project as having a place and as part of that?
Okay, I'll offer a short one and then give to you to have the last word, Kaila. So in relation to the broader vision of the project, and also some of the sense of responsibility, part of the ethics of care of the project was related to two things. So we thought in the grand scheme of things about seeing our funding for the project is partly funded from the UK research councils, but a particular pot of funding, the GCRF funding, comes through the aid budget. And we were very much thinking that we need to think about aid less in terms of a gift, this gift that gets given by northern countries to former, in many cases, former colonies, and think that more as part of this work of repair. Repair in relation to the very same kinds of capitalism that the whole sugar explosion in the Caribbean led to all the emissions and all the profits that came back here and all the techniques for making capitalism grow and grow and grow, right? And that means that the little crumbs that then get sent back, then saying that as a gift, it seems a bit odd to us. So we're thinking much more in terms of repair. So that's the grander ethics. But the more localized ethics is in what way are we caring in terms of the work that we're doing? Are we not trying to make people relive the same trauma again and again and again? We're all kind of beginning to well up as we're going back through this stuff. So in what way that might be healing? I think about the quote from a Martinican philosopher called Edward Glissant, and he says, storytellers are the jobbers of the collective soul. The jobber is like a handy person, like a handyman, that kind of thing, or a handy woman. These are people who help with the kind of the fixing work. So telling stories, bye, Kieran, take care. So that healing work is part of that storytelling. And if we can think about that in relation to the work that we've been doing, that would be one merit and value of the project, in the same way as Priscilla was talking about with her father and the need of him having someone to talk to. Part of what we wanted to do was to have a kind of a healing circle as part of it, in the same community that we worked in. Funding and time, that it didn't immediately materialize, and it meant that when we had very limited time, when we reached out to some people who we thought might be able to help us make that happen, who had a bit more expertise in this area than us, we didn't immediately get traction, and we didn't want to go half-hearted. We didn't want it to just be something that you just throw money at and then it doesn't go anywhere. We want to apply for an extension to the project, so maybe this is a kind of a space for something that we could follow up on and do more with, because the funding is there to make something like that a possibility, but the time is quite limited. So yeah, and the last thing, we wanted to do a film screening as well, public film screening of all of these films, which was in a public location this past summer. Of course, we're doing a project about the weather during hurricane season. We had an outdoor screening. Who told you to do that? It didn't work. So again, with the extension, we'd like to actually do it in Loubiere at the playing field, which has now been rehabilitated, which was destroyed by the river, has been rehabilitated. So that would probably be the ideal setting for that kind of thing. And maybe that could start or continue something of a communal conversation, about these things.
Yeah, and what I wanted to say was that during the project, that is, when we started doing the interviews, there was a lot of conversation about people's stories, and other people would just, once you mention the project and you start to describe it, they will start to tell you their story. No camera, no recording, you're just talking to a person, and they'll start to tell you, I lost this window, I was sleeping, they'll start to tell you immediately.
And then you have to turn the camera.
Well, I mean, that happened for Augie. But outside of the filming, we were having these conversations. Every time you bring up the project, you start talking about the project, they will start giving you a story. So I think that healing, that big conversation that you want to have, it was happening during, not necessarily recorded, but it was happening during the project. When I mentioned it to my parents, my friends, they would start telling me their stories, and that was healing for them. So I think that the healing happened all throughout the story, project. Sorry.
I think on that note, we'll wrap this session up. We will be asking more Kaila into the next session, just briefly, but just to thank both of my colleagues, collaborators right here. Much appreciated. Thank you.